from my heart place to your heart place, Dr. Kamaia Pere to Heart Place Hospital podcast.
Woo! I need to be on this podcast with you, sister.
Yeah. So I like to start the podcast. I will do a little intro, but I like to start how I first met you. So I first met you at Sacred Earth, out at Karikari, West Auckland. And it was part of the Nightingales group. So there's a group of us medicine women who have connected and have had some pretty amazing activations. And so that was the first time I met you. And I remember thinking, wow, who is this young hot woman? And I also remember you saying to me, I needed some time out, so I've actually booked and staying here. And we went and we actually had lunch in your whare, and it was this beautiful, like, fully glassed accommodation looking out to the west coast. It was, the gardens were like Balinese, and I know that you're zooming in today from Bali. So yeah, I remember that. That was our first meeting, and I know we went on an amazing bushwalk into a waterfall, and all bathed in there, all the nightingales bathed in there. So that was our first meeting, and I was still living in Tamaki at the time, and there was no intention of leaving. And then the second time we met in person, I'd actually left Tamaki and I was living in the north, just like yourself, and we had this magical day at the beach, and we both climbed up this mountain, and we found out at the same time that we had received this abundance of funding. And we were like high-fiving one another, and just so happy. And we went back to your whare, and that's where I had an ice plunge, sauna and ice plunge. And your crew, your tribe showed up for a potluck dinner, and they were all Haveners. And so I also got to experience more havening. It wasn't my first rodeo, but I got some more havening. So I had this magical day of receiving nature, medicine, great food, great people, and some energy healing to boot. So that was our second meeting in person. Then our third meeting in person was just recently, the end of 2023. And I came up to Whangarei, and because you're this magician, priestess magician, and you are the co-founder of a float tank in Whangarei. And so you put out the call. You said, I'm looking for someone to model. And I'm like, yeah, you've got my attention. And I love this. You said, we're looking for someone who's over 35. And I was thinking, oh, yes, that's me. I am so that. 50, but still over 35. And so I came along, and I had this magical day of experiencing plant medicine, havening, and your float tank, your medicine. So that's how we've connected. And then lucky universe, Dr. Kamaia Pere is also on the Heart Place Hospital board. So that is how we've been connected. So cool, and I love it because we're also both Capricorns. We're kind of like these goats that cling onto the side of the wall, and don't you dare pull us off. Yeah, but I just want to read your beautiful bio. So your love is to bring light into the world and reconnecting people to their innate gifts and superpowers. And in 2021, you worked as a house officer, so a junior doctor at Whangarei DHB, District Health Board, or Te Whare Ora, while opening our collective to work with health professionals to take control of their stress and feel calm with simple and effective tools. You're an innovator, and you blend indigenous knowledge with science, and the most important part, fun. You also believe we are all born to be powerful light beings, and you help your clients to feel this too. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I know how fun you are because I've played with you. But I'd love you to share with everyone who's listening or watching, because people are gonna watch this too. A brief introduction of yourself and your background and what really actually led you to this current role that you're in currently, working from Bali.
Okay, well, it's always that, where do you start, hey?
Yeah.
And it's like, you start at the birth, I start with my lineage, and so like I'm Māori, so I'm actually going to start with a bit of my whakapapa and where I'm from. So, I te taha o te mama no Tairāwhiti ea, so on my mum's side I'm from Gisborne, Rongapakata, te aitanga mahaki a mai iwi, and then on my dad's side I'm from Raglan, so Whangarei and Ngāti Koata, toku iwi, and so for me, it's that I love the sunshine coming up, but I also love watching the sunshine going down. And so it's that full circle of that light journey, going from Te Po, bringing it into Te Ao Marama, and really experiencing that as a human being. And so I guess that journey of going from the darkness to the light has been my journey. And so starting from birth, just a little recap. So at birth I was actually born with no biological dad. And so my mum was forced to be a single mum at 8 months pregnant, not to her doing. And so I came into this world in a pretty dark and stressful place. And so I think it's a really interesting one being a health professional, because you think of what is our job, like what do we do? And it's, we buffer out people's heavy fucking shit all day, every day. And so you think about my journey where I started off with a mum who's a single parent, and she was a midwife and a nurse, so I have that lineage around the health professionals. But my role was to kind of buffer out her and my family's heavy shit, and that pain and that suffering. And so what I got really good at as a kid, response, was being emotionally intelligent, to really settle in and feel all the energies that are going on, and then to buffer the shit out of it. And so that's really where in that dark space I became really good at bringing in the light energy. For me it was the fun, so the way I do that is I try and make people laugh, I try and dance, and for dancing for me is always that reconnecting. But I think we get to a point, and usually, so from there, buffering out people's heavy shit, no surprise I landed in the medical system. My mum, I remember she told me, she's like, I'm a nurse, I'm a midwife, you're going to go do something better, so you're going to go and be a doctor. I like helping people. I like science. I like buffering out people's heavy shit. Okay, like, sign me up.
I love it.
Really only halfway through, where I was like, holy shit, what the fuck am I doing here? Because it was this place where, and I'm sure if you're listening on the other side of the, wherever you are, and you're a health professional, it is absolutely insane. Like, the things you go through, the things you have to do to get through the medical profession and the training is absolutely ridiculous. And so I remember this one time, I was a medical student, I was halfway through, you'd done all the book work, and it was that first time, like, getting loose into the hospital. And for me, like, I love people, right? That's why you become a health professional, is to be with people, to be with whānau, to make that connection. And here I was with this old man, and I just remember the moment of, there was none of that heart-to-heart connection, because I was so stuck in that logical brain of needing to try and problem solve, to come up with a differential diagnosis, to then, am I asking the right questions to put it through that medical framework as you're learning. And so in that moment, I just felt so disconnected from my heart, so disconnected from myself, but also so disconnected from that person who really, if you've been on the other end of receiving healthcare, just needs that space to be held, to be seen, to listen, and just the container. And I think that's really what we've lost in the medical profession, because we've just so overwhelmed with things we have to do. So you don't actually have that time and that space to hold. But I was going to say, that's a belief. There's definitely moments where I've had time and space to hold. And so going through the medical profession and the training, halfway through I was like, man, like, I don't want to do this. And the only way in my mind at that time, because I had massive imposter syndrome and pressure to be the best, was like, I'm going to do an honours degree. And I ended up looking at kind of institutionalised racism, how we can stop implicit bias in medical students. I analysed the data, I looked at what's out there. And the biggest thing I realised was, while we hold this intention to want to help, to want to heal, unless our energy, unless our own vibration, unless our emotions, unless our mindset is matching that of love, we will never actually action that. And so the biggest lesson I learned was, while we have a good intention, our actions actually never quite get there. And I'm just going to put it out there as a broad statement to reflect on yourself, because in that moment I realised, fuck, my actions don't match what I want either. Like, what's going on here? And I think that's the biggest it's the biggest contrast of being a health professional, because you really want to help, but then you've got all this shit on the inside and it's fucking draining. And so it's like, how do we marry this discourse or the disconnect? And so that's really how I became to literally be sitting here right now. And then just a little next bit of the story, which was the kind of crux of how I got really into this space and even the medical profession, was in 2017. Picture this, we were in Raglan. My mum had come back from Bali. She worked in the Arnhem Land as a remote rural nurse.
Wow.
We were dancing on the dance floor. She'd just been like diving in the ocean. Next day, she went home early, so me and my friends were out partying. She went in this, she actually slept in my Jeep that night. But she got a pain in the ear, and then we drove home to Gisborne. She started getting a bit of a headache. And then literally the next day after my birthday, she ended up in ICU with meningitis. We had to get flown to Waikato, and she was in ICU for a week, HDU for 2 weeks, in the hospital for at least a month. She'd lost both of her hearing, which means she couldn't actually be grounded to this earth or to this moment. And it was one of the most challenging moments of my life, to be on the other side, to not be in control, to not be the health professional, to be the daughter of a woman who is, because of her past trauma, was running up and down the wards screaming, thinking people were going to come and get her. And so for me it was a really, I'm not sure for you guys listening out there, but if you go through one of the dark nights of your soul where you're in the fucking shithole, you got two options. And for me at that point in time, one option was to like just quit it, like go and kill myself. The other option was to think about, how the fuck am I going to get through this? And so then we go through, like, if you've been in the shithole, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It sucks. But then you're at rock bottom. So there's only one way possibly I can go if I don't tap out. And so then we start searching. And I think that journey of searching is so disempowering in the medical system. Like, if you think about that traditional path, for example, even now, you go, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, to the RMO unit, what can I do? And all we're matched with is, oh, let's take 2 weeks off stress leave, book in with your GP. GP, depending on how they are, will talk about some kind of, like, they really try, go for a walk on the beach, practice some mindfulness, but I don't really have time for this. So there's the option of some medication to balance out the chemical imbalance in your brain, when actually it's a much more systemic thing, and it's the environment where they're surrounded by, and then come back to work in 2 weeks. So we see you then. Yeah. And so I think that typical pathway of just where we're at and how we manage stress and burnout did not work for me at all, and I don't think it works for many people. Apart from maybe that 2 weeks off to actually be able to stop and centre and reconnect with yourself. And so then I went exploring. So I sent out to the universe. I said, mate, universe.
Gus, God, universe, source.
halfway, how old was I then? I was probably early 20s.
Yeah.
I said, like, if women can create babies without thinking about it, right? Like, how magic is that? Sperm, egg come together, implant in the uterus. Here we go about our day. We're bam, baby. Whew, magic. Surely there's an easy way to heal our shit, to heal the trauma, to heal the suffering, to heal all these emotions. And at this point in time, like, you've got to realize I was in the shithole. Like, there'd be moments where you'd think even psychosis was coming through. I wasn't connected to myself at all. Anytime I try and enter the hospital system because of how trauma is encoded to remember threatening events, I get activated in an anxiety response. Anytime I get asked a question because I had imposter syndrome by my consultant, I get activated into an anxiety response and go deer in the headlights. It wasn't really good. Anytime I talk about my mum, again, activated into an anxiety response. So this was how I was living, and it's no wonder why you get into the depression. I put it out there. And so coincidentally, I ended up in Raglan, which at that point in time, I didn't know that's where I was from, with another doctor called Dr. Robin Youngson and his beautiful wife called Meredith. And these beautiful humans, while I was at my GP placement, they took me in. And then he said, like, sounds like you've been going through a lot lately. I've got this technique. And I was like, no way, what's it called? And he said it's called havening, like a safe haven techniques. It's developed by a doctor over in the States. All it is some self-soothing touches that we do intuitively, and we mix it with science, and it actually works. And so when he said this, I was like, sign me up.
Sign me up, baby.
Please. And so what he did within the hour, and just to give you a brief background, so whenever we go through a distressing memory that we can't escape, and we have some kind of vulnerability, whether it's lack of sleep, childhood trauma, stress, literally our body is wired to survive. So we take a mental snapshot of that image, and it's everything we see on the outside. So look of face, tone of voice. If you did something threatening to me, Jack, and I felt like I couldn't escape, even the colour of your dress would be snapshot, as well as the inside. So how we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we're believing. Mental snapshot gets stored in the back of our brain. And as we're just walking around our day to day, we're always, there's like a protector looking out for us. And so if it sees something that reminds us of that moment from the past, click, straight away, faster than a thought, we go into stress response. And so that's where I was at. And that's where I think, reflecting on health professionals and where we're at as a collective, we are just constantly getting triggered in that stress response because we've got all this shit stored in the background that we can put as trauma, we can put as moments from the past that fucking suck. And we're just getting triggered. And so for me, within 1 hour after having a session with Robin, I literally, the next day, could talk about my mum without crying. It was just talking about my mum like mum was my mum for the first time in a year. And then I walked into the hospital, and my heart rate for the first time was in the 60s rather than 130. And so I was like, shit. Oh, and the best part about it was actually you could have fun during it. So I'm not sure if you've ever been in a counselling session, and you kind of just feel like your heart's getting stabbed and you're bleeding out, and then you come out and you're just like...
Yeah, and the backdraft and all the pus.
Getting activated and nothing's happening with it.
Yeah.
And that's just a general consensus. There's a really good counsellors out there who hold and contain space.
Yeah.
But that's what I was used to. And to come out feeling lighter, to actually have a session where you're having fun and you're giggling while you're healing the worst memories of your life, that's when I realised there's power in this. And so I was in my last year of medical school. For my elective, I was meant to be going over the States to train with kind of Bessel van der Kolk and their group in bio and electro feedback, which is going to cost like a shit ton to set up. It's very scientific. COVID happened. So here I was again, landed in Raglan, and I learnt this technique that is so effective. And all you need is like hands and a Wi-Fi connection or in person. And if you don't have hands, you can get someone else's hands to do it for you. And from there, like, my whole life changed. I used it as, I went back into medicine, I completed the degree. I used this technique as the fundamental part of like any blocks I've got. I'm going to come out the other side of the medical degree as myself, as this light being, without any of the shit triggering me. And when something triggers me, now I've got the tools to release it. So created a business on that. I also see floating as a really beneficial way, because we're always stimulated by heaps of stuff to do, to take the world away and just reset and relax our nervous system. So that was actually quite a lot.
It was a lot. It was good though. You kept me quiet. Yeah. So I guess, you're what I call a change breaker, change breaker, change maker. You go against the status quo. Like, you didn't follow the typical career path. How's that been? Like, how's that showing up for you in the world? How's others kind of taken that and reflected back on you? Tell us a little bit about what that's been like.
Yeah, there was a part of me when I was younger, like in my teenage years, I just wanted to be in the box, hey? Like, I wanted to fit the mold. And no shit, when I started med school, it was like I'd pictured Dr. 90210 becoming a plastic surgeon, wearing the like Prada heels with my first paycheck in my mind was going to be a Louis Vuitton bag. I still want one, but it's a different intention now. And so I used to be in the box. Somehow, I don't know, there's just these moments in time where it doesn't sit well, hey? And so to be in that conventional model alone, it's actually really draining. Like, there's not much joy in that place. And so what I found was that the more I actually honour those little door openings, so for me it was to do the honours, for me it was to, what was another big one? It was to take a year out of med school, which was like, whoa, no one does that. As well as then I took another year out of med school, and then I left the medical profession at the start of what would be the most fruitful kind of career projection and stable thing. But I did it because I was listening to what my heart wanted and what my intuitive kind of mind needed. And so I just kind of looked at where the trajectory was going. I looked at all my consultants, and I really didn't see anyone whose lifestyle I wanted, because it's quite a sick and unhealthy system. And so all these little moments in time and these doors open, and I think the difference is you just choose to jump through it. And so what the kind of reverberations around that is like, when you honour yourself, you open up opportunities. When you open up the opportunities and you walk through the door, you feel this joy, you feel the expansion. Thriving is an easy and effortless state. You're not in that survival mode because you're not resisting yourself anymore. And so I think when you show up in that space, then that really does have an impact on other people. And people are like, what are you doing? Like, what are you? What are you doing?
And that's what I'm loving about this podcast, is we're able to highlight that we can still be these traditional frontliners, we can still be carers, and doesn't necessarily show up with the white coat or by the bedside, or if you're an educator but in the classroom, which we know is not conducive to caring for our carers, and then the ripple effects off to those that we're actually caring for. It's detrimental in some cases. Yeah.
Then I think even just on that, so like I said, like I'm out of the system at the moment. Don't forget, like I was in the system 4 months ago. I was working as an orthopaedic house officer. But I think when we come into breaking the mold, or not being that robotic kind of just day-to-day transactional state, when we can manage our stress, when we can come into a space of thriving, of love, to have those little moments in the hospital, for me to break the mold, like, that's what I really love. I remember where, like, we had a patient who had a stroke, couldn't hear, he was just in his bed with nothing, no stimulation, it was COVID. Imagine that, like, literally, if we're going to encode trauma, being trapped in your body, not being able to communicate with any stimulation. And so what I used to do is I used to sneak in my speaker, and I'd leave my phone in there with him, and I found out what his favourite, like, he loved reggae and Catch a Fire. So I just used to put, like, Catch a Fire on while I was doing the ward round. I'd leave my phone for a couple hours, and just to be able to ignite those moments of joy for the client, hey, and you kind of feel like, you feel a little bit mischief because it's not what the norm is, but it has an impact, like, for the client. And I think bringing it back to when we're in that health professional, we can always recenter it on the person we're serving. Like, it's not about serving the system, it's about that human in front of us, and what can I do to bring some light and some joy into their space and some compassion. Like, I think if all we did was that, and also reflected back on ourselves, of course, then that's the magic. Like, and you can create moments of magic in the hospital anytime. Like, so during COVID, I'd bring the jar of the M&Ms. It's not the healthiest choice. You'd bring the coffee. On Friday, I'd bring my speaker and I'd make all the nurses dance. I'd do massages. Like, it's those little moments that are really felt by the other person. I think the more moments we can have like that, then the whole system changes.
Yeah. I love it. You reminded me of, I was a new grad at Starship, and one of our senior nurses said to our house officers, quick, get the fallopian tube from ED stat. They like start sprinting down to ED to grab the fallopian tube. And it was just gold. It was awesome. Just really, like you said, it lifted up that frequency, that vibration, and allowed us to kind of move through the rest of the day, which can be really super heavy. So, yeah.
Maybe if you're listening out there, then it's actually like, what little moments can you implant or can you do that help lift that vibration? That help. Just like there's a real heaviness in the hospital. And then we attune to that heaviness. And so, like, you really all know that feeling of going into the hospital and you just feel like, I remember just being like so tired and drained. And so what little moments can we plant in the hospital? But first, before we plan it for others, this is where I'm going to put my pitch, is like, you need some moment of me time. And if you're a nurse out there, you're like, what the fuck is that? I don't do me. I do you. And all moments of me time. So I had a beautiful person come in the float tank. She taught me this. She just said, every day I take 4 moments out for myself. And they're conscious moments that I do just for me. And so what that signals to your brain, what that signals to your body is, I value me and I'm taking some time out to recharge. It could be something simple like, I haven't got a coffee on me. But the moment when you have your coffee, instead of being rush, 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 do, chug, 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 sitting, smelling, being present, thanking the coffee for the stimulation and the energy and the brain power it's going to give you. Taking that moment for you, there's one. Next moment could be in the morning tea break when you've only got 3 minutes, I'm just going to sit outside and feel the sun on my face. And I think so moments of me time, do 4 of them a day. And then from there, when you're starting to recharge yourself, then it's easy to put those magic moments in the hospital. Yeah. Magic moments in the hospital. I think that should be...
Oh my God, T-shirt. We should do like a one of those dances. It'd be amazing. Okay. Yeah, totally in. I am one of my many healing modalities. When I had what I call my mat trap moment, yours was your dark night, was dance, and I went to Morning People. So I went to a nightclub. First thing at 6:30 in the morning, no drugs, no alcohol, and the slogan was party first, work later. And I still really stick to that. Like, I have a real morning routine where I really create time for pleasure, that things that really bring me joy, and then I find that I have this energy, and I work more in power hours as opposed to 8 hours a day or whatever, and that's the life that I've crafted that best suits me. And like you, this is something I would have loved to have heard, and I just love that you've shared this, is when we do these moments of me time, when we do these opportunities of healing what I call boundary wounds, we've all got them, because we're designed to get them so that we can actually create space to alchemize them and elevate and increase our frequency, and then that ripple effects off to everybody else. And I just remember when I first, and I went to the talk therapist, I got the antidepressant prescription, and I thought, is this it? And then it wasn't until I started really experiencing true healing, and like you, mine was all fun. I was like, whoa, this is beautiful. This is magical. Like I am actually creating, like, what I'm taking away that has been amazing and supported me to survive to this point. It's filling with light. It's a beautiful, it's joyful, and even though all sorts of stuff's still going on around me, I just have all these moments of feeling joy. And what I also discovered was, because I had a real belief that you're broken, you get fixed. Whereas now my understanding and my knowing is that it's ongoing. And now that I've experienced it so much, when I get what I call crunchy, so my iceberg lettuce times, I'm like, okay, this is cool. Where's this going to go? What are we going to use? What are we going to use to move through it? And most of the time I'm resourced enough now that I can move through it myself, but I'm also equally created Heart Place Hospital so that I've also got the resource outside of myself that I can tap into if what I've got, I'm not, I need. This is how we design. We're designed to be celebrated and witnessed. So if I need some witnessing, I can tap into any number of service providers that offer this, whatever is needed at the time. Yeah. And is that sort of your experience too? Like, it's once you pop, you can't stop. Like you can't.
Once you see, you can't unsee.
Yeah.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
Once you can't stop. And I think 100%. Hey. And I think we get to the point. And so, what did you call your dark night of the soul? What's your one called?
Well, I talk about my Mack truck moment. So lots of taps on my shoulder, 4x4 on the back of my head. Didn't listen. Mack truck on the floor. And mine was too. Mine was literally do or die. And I'm like that now too. Like with being visible and showing up, and even times when my voice is a bit wobbly and I lose my words and things like that. I'm like, no, people, we've got to be seen. This has got to be seen that there is another way. And it's still do or die. It's literally still do or die. It's do this or die. Yeah.
So that's and we see it in the hospital. Like, we go through those Mack truck moments, hey? Mm. And for many people, like the clients who I see, like, you don't just come when you're just having, actually, some of them do now, but you don't just come when you're having, like, a happy day and, like, I just want to release some shit stuff, like, I'm getting activated here, like, let's go do it. Like, you come in your worst of the worst. And same when people present to the hospital. Like, looking back when you have a conversation with them, when you actually have a conversation with yourself, there are many moments where your body, where your mind, where your energy is like, sister or brother, this is not working for you. Like, you feel drained for a reason. You feel fatigued for a reason. You can't go to sleep for a reason. You're not having good quality sleep. You're waking up feeling tired for a reason. And because of this society we live in with that, like, you just push, do, don't stop to listen. If not, let's just medicate it instead, hey? Like, let's just numb it down a bit. Then if we don't listen to those moments, and so if you're in here and you're resonating with us, I think it's a really nice reflection point to just take a moment and actually tune in to see what we need. But if we don't and we keep pushing, the Mack truck moment happens. And so there's been so many people that I'd see in the hospital who would present with these physical symptoms, the chest pain, the back pain, the tummy pain, and when you actually reflect on what actually got you into hospital, like, what was your life looking like, what was your environment looking like, what was your emotions happening, what actually around you was happening, it's usually a big complex thing, like, and so it's like, when do we stop to take the time to reflect on that? And then, like you've already mentioned, and I think Heart Place Hospital is amazing, and you're amazing, Jackie, is to then be able to have tools that work. And so I think to be able to reflect on what's working for me, what's not, like at the moment, that conventional model when we're stressed and burnt out, for a lot of people it's not working. And so then it's people like you, it's people like me, it's people who are in the Mack truck moment have to look outside. And I think the beautiful place about what you're doing is you're allowing it to be easily accessible for people on the front line who are right here, right now, in the shithole. What are we going to do about it? And so I think that's the power of your bringing of this place, of why we're having this conversation.
Oh, no words. No words. Big heart. Big heart. Yeah, totally. Amazing. Yeah, it's lovely to hear that reflected back, actually, because it's almost 8 years since my Mack truck, and I just think, I just keep going back to my why, and I mean, my big why is that I just don't think we can sustain humanity if we continue to use this symptom controlling method. So that's my big why. But my why that really just hits me in my womb is I think about Jackie 8 years ago and how lost and alone I felt, and I just keep thinking if I'd shown up and said, "Hey sister, I've got the place for you," and I chose the name Heart Place Hospital for a really big reason. Initially I chose Heart Place because I'm a heart kid and had open heart surgery as an 8-year-old. So that was my initial reasoning. And then now it's just so obvious, and you mentioned it. Like, we have to come from our heart place. We have to come from a place of love, and that's where the magic and miracles come from. It's literally the panacea. And then hospital, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also the actual meaning of hospital is hospitality, so bringing in strangers and welcoming them. So for me, my why is really being able to create that soft land for people, and my dream is that it's not all Mack truck people, and it's happening. It's happening faster than lightning. It's not everyone that is actually getting the message when they're down on their knees and they can't access, busyness and their numbing vices, which was me. All my numbing vices, all my busyness, all my tools were taken from me, and my whispers return. We've all got them. And my whispers return and said, care for the carer. And I've just taken the breadcrumbs along the way, and that's what I appeal to people. Like, just take that, like you said, that moment a moment for me, and your whispers will just put a breadcrumb in front of you, I promise. And just take that first breadcrumb, yeah.
And I think that's where, like, all my clients who come to see me with burnout, anxiety, all of the symptoms of just stress, stress built up, and here's an explosion, and here we are. Like, the main essence of burnout, and like you can look at all the studies, whatever, is it's just so simple. It's you're not giving yourself the time, energy, and joy that you need. Like, you're literally burning out. You're giving, if our energy, our time, our attention is like in a cup or a battery, we're just giving it all out until we're at like 10%, 0%. And then of course you're going to feel burnt out. And so I think that element of really what this conversation is bringing me back, bringing some time, energy and focus back into me and saying I'm worth it. Like, I'm enough and I deserve this. And I always think, like, depending on your worldview, but let's just say you only have one lifetime, this one, for now. If you only have one lifetime, how do you want to live it, right? And so I think as working in the hospital, working in the health system, we get reflected so often that life is not this infinite thing, it is very finite. And so some people who see their last breath, some people who get those diagnoses, like, we're reflected that life is not forever. And so that moment of, okay, I know life is not forever, and there's a lot of fear around that, like, especially in the world we live in, death is a scary thing, but how am I going to choose to live my life? And I think if you ask yourself that question, And like, here was me asking myself that question in the hospital in my 20s. I was like, am I going to spend like the best years of my life in this place? Like, am I going to be 30 in this place? Like, is this how really I'm going to bring it in? And for me, the answer was no, you know? And so,
hell no.
the part is when you get a no from yourself, it's how do we honour that? Like, within the kind of world that we're in, I think just briefly, like COVID and the mandates, Jesus, that was the main, like, that was a big moment for a lot of us, right? Like,
totally.
There's some people signalling no, or whether we're on any side of the fence, but it's like, how do we honour ourselves? And so to be able to have tools, I think, Jackie, to be able to have a support, to be able to have that container around you, to be able to give yourself permission, even if it's not right now, to just be curious on what life's going to look like if I honour myself. What do I really want? And so it's not that, like, just because I'm out of the health system, I do dip in and out all the time. It's just looking at what do I want now and how can I honour it. And for someone, it might not be a fight. Like, if you're feeling trapped right now, you're going to want to escape. There's a lot of people moving over to Aussie right now. And so if you're that person, I'd just really want to say, find someone who can hold some space for you. We can process that stress, we can process the trappedness and make a decision from empowerment.
Beautiful.
And once we do that and we honour ourselves, then we can start to move to where we want to go. And so I think I asked myself, when did I ask myself that? Last year. I said, what do I want? I was in the float tank. And I was like, what kind of what am I going to do in the float tank being a mermaid? And the question was really honouring, what do I want? And you need to do a statement like, I want this.
Yeah.
And what came up for me was like, I want to be a speaker. And I'm like, what? Never thought of that. And so here we are on this podcast, and I'm speaking and I'm putting my voice out there.
Yeah.
And so when we actually say, what do I want? You don't need to figure out the how. If it's meant to be, it will, and you can just trust that these doors will open and you'll step through.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily need to mean you need to leave the health profession. That is not at all what we're saying. It is, how can I honour myself now?
Yeah.
And so there are some, some epic people in the health system, like the magicians, the people who bring that joy in the space, those beautiful conversations we have. Like, there's so much wealth in that. I think we just get so caught up in that lens of the sickness, of the fixing, of the heaviness. And so when we can start to take away our own heaviness and reframe our mindset to that connection, then we get a whole different experience of our life of working in the health profession. And that's magic. Like, the thought of that, if everyone did that, makes me so
Yeah, me too. Amazing. And I know we've popped your podcasting cherry. So when you become a world famous speaker, don't forget this moment. I won't. Yeah. So just to end things, I really want to ask you, like, when you go into your heart place, like, what is your why? What is coming up for you? Like, what's coming up next, and what's your why, and what's something you can share with the world, because it's going to be world famous. That Dr. Kamaia Pere is, and where can people find you as well? So what's in your heart place? What's your why, and what's coming up with that why, and where can we find you?
With the why, in med school, I had this vision, and I pictured like me as this light in a really fucking dark place. And so the hospital was so heavy, and so as me in this light, then what I pictured was all these other light people just start coming and opening up as well. And so then the darkness disappears. And so I guess we're full circling now with the sun going round and bringing light in a dark place. That's my zone of genius. So the thing that I do really easily is I bring a big fucking light bubble into the place. Everyone's smiling. It's either through dance, it's through healing the trauma, it's through these conversations. So in exchange, because this is who I am, you leave feeling lighter. And I think that's that's the magic. That's what I love to bring into this world. So I can have a conversation with you, and I'm feeling lighter talking to you.
Me too. I'm like dancing.
That if you feel lighter too, then that's a beautiful exchange. And so that is who I am and what I bring. In terms of where you can find me, and it's really interesting. So just done a contract, and Jackie and I got an awesome contract with them, First Steps, which I've actually put out some free resources on, like, if you're stressed and you're burnt out and you're overwhelmed, like, this is where you start. It's using Te Whare Tapawhā model, but it actually makes it practical and embodied, and it's a really nice place to tune into where your energy's at and how to put some moments in me time. So you can find me on Our Collective, so OUR collective.co. There's no .nz at the end, so it's ourcollective.co. You can sign up for that free module series as well. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, and then the float tank. We've got the float tank sitting up there up north.
We have got the float tank. So other thing, I have a flotation tank centre in Whangarei. If you're around, we're the only one north of Auckland, so it's really easy to find. You just look up Float Whangarei and it pops up on the Google.
Amazing. And what about your socials? How can people find you on your social media?
Socials, I just say easiest way is to go through the website on ourcollective.co. Otherwise, on Instagram, it's our_collective. And I guess with that vision, right, of me lighting up the place because I'm releasing all this fucking heavy shit, other people lighting up, it's that vision of us all coming together and harnessing and coming into our superpowers.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love it. Oh, thank you so much.